So I think the Browns' expectations at this point, based off of the Vegas totals and all those things, are low. I think you feel the same way, that this team is more talented than people are giving it credit for.
I do. I think there's a lot to watch for with this team besides the quarterbacks during training, not just during training camp, but the upcoming season. I think that there's a lot of positive things to watch with this team. The problem is, it always comes back to the quarterback, and it has been the Achilles heel of this franchise for the better part of 3, maybe 4 decades, going all the way back to Bernie Kosar. Yeah, okay, Vinny Testaverde helped him get to the playoffs in 1994 and whatnot, but it's been a problem. Baker Mayfield, we got a little reprieve. During COVID, they win 11 games. They go into Pittsburgh in front of family and friends night because no one was allowed to be in person for that. And they just slap the Steelers silly up and down the field all night long, come within a couple of plays legitimately in Kansas City of
getting fumble out of the end zone rule that I hate so much.
Or Rashard Higgins getting drilled in the crown of the helmet. And no call was made there, but and that happened at the goal line.
That's what I'm talking about.
But they legitimately came within a couple of plays of the conference championship game. And then obviously Baker gets hurt, and that leads to a transition at the position. Joe Flacco, everyone's clinging to what happened in 2023, and can he resurrect that? He played arguably the 5 best weeks of his NFL career, at least in the regular season. I say that realizing he's a former Super Bowl champion and Super Bowl MVP, but that 5-game stretch that he had for the Browns, where he became the only Browns quarterback in history to throw for 300 yards and 4 times in 5 weeks, or some absurd stat like that, which, by the way, this happens in the NFL all the time. But because you're the Cleveland Browns and you can never find a quarterback, this is record-breaking territory that it's groundbreaking for them. That's what you're clinging to, or you're hoping the reclamation project of the Kenny Pickett.
So what I wanted to get to with this, though, was I agree. We're on the same page. We think the Browns roster is more talented.
I hate being on the same page with you, though. Well, that's no fun.
We might disagree on this next thing, though. So with the roster the way it is, I think this team is better than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I think it's easy when you have a 3-14 season last year to just write off the Browns and say they're going to suck again. They're the Browns, whatever. But we keep touting the beginning part of this season, and we use it in our conversation with the quarterbacks. You can't put a rookie out there for that stretch. We talk about it being the thing that could make or break essentially how their season goes. If they, somehow win 3 or 4 of those games, all of a sudden it's maybe the Browns are going to be better than we thought. If they only win 2 of those games, it's okay, the season's already sort of weighing in the balance when you get to the middle of the season, week 7, week 8. I don't know though, Daryl, that I get it. You're looking at a bunch of teams early on in the schedule. The Bengals, who were a fringe, just missed the playoffs last year, and they have Joe Burrow.
No, they're winning that game. The Browns are starting 1-0.
I agree, because they always beat the Bengals generally. I know they didn't last year, but they do well against the Bengals. The Ravens, legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Packers, playoff team from last year. Lions, playoff team from last year. Vikings, playoff team from last year. Pittsburgh team in Pittsburgh that owns you. Those are the 6 games we're talking about, right? Those are the 6 games?
Yeah, so please tell me where all the wins are coming from.
So listen, no. In theory, yes, that looks like a tough stretch of the schedule.
Because it is.
But here's the thing. What are we basing that off of? Last year?
Yes.
We're basing it off of records from last year? Because year to year, what do we always say in the NFL? Year to year, these things can be so different. The Packers were a playoff team last year.
The Bengals, the Ravens, the Packers, the Lions, the Vikings, and Steelers. Well, not the Steelers, I'm sorry, but the Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions, and Vikings are all expected to be playoff teams this year.
Yeah, expected to be.
This is for you, Spencer. You've done it. You've become fully a Browns fan. Are you serious on right now going, what are you basing it off of? The past? That's all we have to base. We can sit there and go, what if? But this team and the organization has shown you who they are throughout the years. And I would love for them to be more like the 2023 Browns than every other year, or the 14 Browns who at least started the year winning and then ended up losing.
It's not
or the 2020 Browns. But it's so bad that you can go rip off the 5 good seasons that they've had in 30 years. That's how bad it's been.
I get it. So it's not that I'm saying don't use last year's results as the reason to say this is a hard schedule. I get that that's all we have. That's all we have to go off of. But when I'm thinking about an NFL schedule, don't we always say at the beginning portion of the season too that like, hey, teams are kind of feeling themselves out? How many years in a row have the Bengals started like 0-4, and then they always almost find their way back into the playoffs or into the playoffs? The year they made the Super Bowl, they started, I think, 0-4. Like the beginning, the Ravens got off to a rough start last year. Weren't they like 0-3 or like 1-4 to start the season or something like that?
The Browns are going to win week 1 and then lose 5 straight.
But this is my point. Like, you talk about this being a tough stretch. Yes, in theory, it's going to be a tough stretch because of the teams and how good they were last year. But think about it. Like, wouldn't you rather play those teams at the beginning of the season when it's like you're shaking off that rust, getting into rhythm? A lot of teams don't know their identity until you get to like October, November, December anyway, rather than play them at the end of the season.
All right,
so I just think we're overstating. Like, yes, it looks like a tough stretch, but it might actually not be as daunting as it seems if like the Vikings get off to a slow start, or the Lions get off to a slow start, or the Packers get off to a slow start, or the Ravens get off to a slow start. You could steal some wins there. That's all I'm saying.
You're telling me Baltimore doesn't know their identity. Green Bay doesn't know their identity. Detroit doesn't know their identity. Minnesota. I mean, if those are all teams that know exactly who they are and are just pushing forward.
And I got news for you. The end of the schedule isn't a cakewalk either. So I'll fast forward to week 11. Baltimore.
Ravens started 0-2 last year. You think you want to talk about like, do they know their identity?
I'll put $100 on the Ravens right now.
No, I'm not saying to bet the Browns. I'm not trying to sell you on, hey, bet the Browns to win 5 games out of the 6. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like,
you sound like a crazy person.
The early portion of the schedule.
Yelling about it. You sound like an absolute kook. Why don't you walk down to Huron Road and just start spouting this stuff out? Because this is what it sounds like to me.
You're like a snake oil salesman.
Yes.
All I'm saying is the beginning of the season is always this kind of feeling out process for a lot of teams. And the Ravens are an example of that from last year, because
instead of winning 1 game early, they might win 2.
The Ravens lost to the Raiders in week 2 last year. You don't think that team knew who they knew they were a Super Bowl contender? They still started 0-2. Like, my point is just that teams get off to slow starts. It sometimes takes teams a little bit to get going and figure out like exactly who they are and what they're doing. And so I think there's a chance that the Browns are more competitive in these games than what we think.
If we catch them on their worst day.
Yeah.
And we just got to do that.
What did you say? What did you say about the Guardians at the start of the show? You play who's in front of you. We can't help that their schedule's softer at this time of year, but they're still going to beat up on these teams.
The Browns don't have a soft schedule, though.
But if the Browns get the Ravens on a day where the Browns beat the Ravens last year in the middle of the season when they'd had a bad day. So if the Ravens get off to a slow start again, who's to say they can't win against the Ravens in week 2?
Like that, are the Guardians a better team than the Orioles?
Yes.
Okay, the Orioles are going to win a game in this series. They play 4 games. They'll win one of them. That's okay.
I hope the Guardians sweep them.
We're talking about apples and oranges
we'll
now.
revisit this on Thursday. Or I guess on Friday because they played Thursday.
Yeah. The Orioles will get a game in here. That's how things happen. That's also why they play 162 games, right?
Well, yeah.
So I don't know that we can compare all that stuff. But I do know what did the Browns add this year that made their team such a big difference from last year's team? Other than subtracting,
their rookie class. I think
their rookie class is the big answer to that question, because
who's
the big
guys, playmaker on the rookie class?
Well,
right now?
I think you have a number of guys that you're expecting are going to make an immediate impact. I think Mason Graham. I think Carson Schlesinger. Quinshawn was supposed to be that. I admit you take a step back.
Carson Schlesinger is going to come in and turn things around for this defense?
I'm not saying I think the defense is going to be good.
We all know who they thought offensively would help this team out. And you don't even know where he's going to be right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think Harold Fannon's going to have an immediate impact. How big is to be determined. But I don't know, man. All I'm saying is we hype up or talk about like, man, that schedule's going to be tough. But like without really knowing like year to year, like, yeah, we're basing off of last year. I get it. That's all we have. But some of these teams might not be as good as last year. Early portion of the season, you get teams that sometimes start slow. Maybe you steal a few. That's all I'm saying. It's not the most pie in the sky scenario we've ever heard of, because we've seen this happen in the NFL before. God forbid I try to get people excited about training camp tomorrow in an upcoming season where...
Well, you're not going to get them excited by talking about the first 6 weeks of the Browns schedule.
I think I can if I sell them on the fact that I don't know that it's as daunting as it seems.
Okay.
Listen, we see teams get off to slow starts all the time.
Listen, I just said they're starting the season 1-0.
That's been your only selling point, though. That's the thing that sticks at me is that it's maybe and hope. There's no.
Oh, isn't that every Browns season is maybe and hope?
No, I'm not even talking about the Browns right now. You're asking for 6 other teams to factor in the negative direction of that. Not just that you're asking that the Browns come out hot and things go their way for 6 weeks, right?
You could have sold it better if you said, hey, the Browns are going to have the quarterback competition is going to be beneficial to them. They're going to pick the right guy, whether it's Flacco, Pickett, or the rookies. They're going to come out firing against the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. So a 2-0 start, which is going to allow them to build their cut. See, it's not the premise. It's you sold it so poorly when you're like, well, you know, the Bengals, they start slow every year. The Ravens started 0-2. You know, the Packers might come in and stub their toe because they don't have their house in order. And then they could go to it. Like, you got to think.
No,
sell it right.
I think the premise of my argument is sound. Like, I understand that
they're going to stink and the Browns are going to luck into a fast start.
I understand that you're leaning on a lot of, like, what has to happen to other teams. And I understand that, like, there's a lot the Browns have to figure out. We have to watch training camp happen. Who they do pick at quarterback is going to matter. But here's what I would say.
You think?
Here's what I would say. I'm going into training camp, and my expectation is that when this thing ends, sitting here today right now, this is my stance. I think Joe Flacco's the quarterback. And if Joe Flacco's the quarterback, and these things that we've talked about throughout the show, we talked to John Greco about, hey, offensive line is good to go start the season. That they're getting back to the Kevin Stefanski offense, which we think is going to be super beneficial. I think part of the reason I think Flacco's going to start, by the way, is because of all the quarterbacks in this room, and with a team right now that has questions at receiver, young running back room. Granted, Quinshaw might not be there for the start of the year. I get that. And you need a guy with like Flacco makes guys around him better. That we know. Because in 2023, he turned David Njoku into a Pro Bowler pretty much single-handedly. He made Elijah Moore look like the wide receiver that was going to be like their wide receiver to Amari Cooper for a couple games, where it was like, hey, where's this guy been? So if Joe Flacco starts the season, and you know he's got chemistry now with Cedric Tillman and the guys through camp, he can get Harold Fannin involved. He's got the connection with David Njoku already built in. He's got Jerry Jeudy out there, and you feel like the offense is going to be better than last year and competent. And yes, a lot of this does bank on they have to have a solid camp offensively, especially because we saw last year they couldn't even get plays off against the Vikings in those joint practices. It was a disaster. So they do have to have a strong camp to then, yes, if these other teams are going to get off to slow starts, they do have to get off to a hot start. And I admit that's a big feat for a Browns team that tends not to do that.
No, actually, you're wrong. They under Kevin Stefanski.
They have had better starts.
September, actually, the first 6 weeks of the seasons are usually the best.
Okay. So there you go.
That's how you're supposed to be selling this. Not that, well, these other teams are,
I agree. You get no credit for this if Daryl's doing the selling for you.
Well, Daryl's on my team now, so it's all good.
No, not on your team.
You two can have your team.
All of a sudden, he's like, hey, Kevin Stefanski does get off the hot starts. But that's my point.
No, your point is that the other teams are going to come in here and just be inferior.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you're saying.
I'm just saying, like, the arbitrary parameters that we put on teams entering the season of like, well, that team's definitely going to be good and that team's definitely going to be bad. It's arbitrary. It's not rooted in anything other than like, well, they sucked last year, so they must suck again this year. And well, they're good. They were good last year, so they're going to be good again this year. The Vikings might suck. Guys, we don't know anything about J.J. McCarthy as a quarterback. What if the Vikings are hot garbage? Like, we don't know.
Okay, now they're 2-4. Give me more, Spencer. Sell me more.
Ravens start 0-2. You beat the Ravens. Now you're 3-3.
You can't say they're 0-2. Why are they 0-2?
Because they got off to a slow start last year. They're going to get off to a slow start again this year.
One.
Joe Flacco's going to ball out first 2 weeks of the season. There you go.
Joe Flacco's going to go into Baltimore and stick it to his former team.
That's a good sell job. Now they're 3-3.
I think we have.
Master salesman Daryl Ryder. As always, brought to you by Scheiben Jewelers, Cleveland's premier jewelry store. He joins us right here. You get him for 4 hours.
Why am
I doing a better job selling this than you are?
I think we have created a boogeyman out of the opening stretch of the season that it doesn't have to be. It seems daunting, yes, but some of these games may not be as hard as they seem once we get to the season, once we get down to the nits and grits, once the pads are on, and once the teams start playing. That's all I'm saying. Let's go to Demos and Shaker. What's up, Demos?
Spencer, I'm telling you, sorry, my dog's barking there, but you are not old enough or cynical enough to understand the Browns and their history here of the last 25 years. I mean, the NFL is set up for parity, okay? Every year, if you have a bad year,
but if it's set up for parity, doesn't that help my argument? If it's set up for parity, that like sometimes teams aren't going to be as strong as we think they're going to be year to year.
Where do we stand in the last 25 years among all NFL teams?
The worst.
So
they are the worst.
What
team.
does the last 25 years have to do with 2025? We say that all the time, right? We say that all the time. Like, well, hey, all the failed quarterbacks, that doesn't impact the quarterback that they draft next year, potentially to be their franchise guy. Why is that a burden that why is that a cross he has to bear? He has nothing to do with those guys. So what does the last 25 years have to do with right now?
It's the management structure of this team is inept, and they cannot put together a winning team, and they've proven it. 25 years is not an anomaly statistically. We've got the crappiest front office. We rewarded a guy by rehiring the guy that made the worst trade in NFL history for Deshaun Watson, and now we lost a running back. We lost a guy on defense that was potentially starter, and you're sitting here like talking about how every other team's going to fall down, and somehow the Browns are going to rise up out of the muck that they've lived in for 25 years. Sorry.
All right, Demo. So I want to clarify something, because I'm not trying to sit here and say that like all these 6 teams they play at the beginning of the season are just going to be hot garbage. That wasn't the premise of my argument, that they just write it off as none of these teams are any good. I'm just saying, like, can we really point to that stretch of the schedule and know for a fact that every single one of those teams in those games that we think is going to be a big, big challenge and is going to be such a hard game for them, and that's going to make it's all going to be tough matchups.
Hey, you know what?
They're all going to be as good as we think they're going to be. Because I think year to year we do that, right? How many times have we make predictions on this station? We sit here and we say, like, I have this team in the Super Bowl and I have that team in the Super Bowl, and then it doesn't always come to fruition. Sometimes we think teams are going to be good. Sometimes I don't think people thought that Washington was going to be as good. I don't think they thought Jayden Daniels would make that team ascend as quickly as he did. I thought they thought Washington would be like a middle-of-the-road team after having a high draft pick last year. They figured it out. So year to year, these things do change. That's all I'm saying. Yes, I'm not saying I'm not even saying like what Demos was, I think, implying is like, I'm going to sit here and I'm trying to sell you on they're going to be a playoff team. I'm not predicting they're going to be a playoff team. All I'm saying is, like, we've looked at this beginning stretch of the schedule, made a boogeyman out of it, and said, well, hey, just look at that. Just don't even count that part of the schedule as getting really any wins. Just say, yeah, maybe one. Maybe they get one out of it. How do we know they maybe don't steal another 1 or 2 just based off of the fact that, like, sometimes teams get off to slow starts. Sometimes teams aren't who we think they are, because we're all forecasting this off of last year, and things have changed since in the calendar year since last season happened. That's all I'm trying to say.
So my only argument against you is that you're right. Things have changed. They've also changed for the Browns, and they weren't in the positive direction.
Well, but
when you bring 4 quarterbacks in and you don't know who it is, and now we're getting closer to the season and you don't know who it is, that has not given me any vibe that tells me today on July 22nd that they're going to be better or sneak one away. Now, maybe by August 22nd, I feel different. Maybe we've seen stuff now that tells me that something has changed within not the organization, but the actual team built, right? Well, and I haven't seen anything, and I'm not going to be one of those guys. I know a lot of people did on a lot of different stations in town during OTAs and minicamp, started charting passes from Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or whoever it was. If you're taking that and adding that into your equation right now, you're playing a fool's game.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. You're playing a fool's game.
I didn't do all that during OTAs. No, that all I'm saying is, and you're right, the quarterback thing is the big question. But I guess I would push back and say this: like, we know what now that we know how bad Deshaun Watson was last year. Now that we know how bad the offense was last year. Like, do you feel like at least if you start Joe Flacco, for example, that the offense has a chance to be better than it was a year ago? Like, do you buy into the idea that like the quarterback situation is theoretically better than what Deshaun Watson was giving you last year when you started the season?
No. Deshaun was bad, and then they continued to play football games after him, and so was Jameis, and so was DTR. They were bad, right? But it wasn't just Jameis threw games away, right? He threw that Denver game away. And had they won that Denver game, I think the outcome of the season goes differently. There was a point in the year when they just said, we can't win anymore. For the good of the draft, that we haven't participated in the first round for 3 seasons now, you can't win anymore, right? So things changed, priorities changed. But I don't know that I look at that and go, well, they're going to have better quarterback play, because if they were going to have better quarterback play, they would have settled on who that quarterback was going to be by now.
I understand it's a big question, but the same way we're forecasting, like, well, all these teams are going to be good because of what they did last year, I think it's fair to do the same thing hypothetically with somebody like Flacco and be like, well, we know what Joe Flacco looks like in this offense, and it was pretty good football.
I'm not in sports talk radio to be fair. I don't think we need to be fair about any of it. I think you need to have an opinion based in something other than, well, maybe it'll happen.
My opinion's based off of NFL history, though, where we see this happen all the time. Teams get off to slow starts. Teams that aren't good are good one year and then not as good the next year. There's always that list of teams that it's like,
you're still just factoring everyone else. I'm talking about the Browns. The Browns are the only one that can control this equation.
Yeah, I get it. I'm talking specific to like the schedule, though, where we're sitting here saying like these games are we because we made it into a boogeyman. We act like the gist of these games are just completely unwinnable. Like we've written it off as like the Browns have absolutely no shot. But then we also talk about how the Browns are more talented than what people are giving them credit for. So which is it? Are they more talented than people are giving them credit for? Or maybe they can hang with these teams? Or are these teams just going to steamroll them for the first 6 weeks of the season because they're just that much better than everybody? That's where I'm at with it. It's like they might still lose a bunch of these games. Maybe they split them and they go 3-3. Maybe they get 2 of them. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong and all these teams that we're projecting are going to be good again are going to be good again. But year to year, so much changes. And I'm just not going to subscribe to this beginning portion of the schedule being like this boogeyman that the Browns can't possibly navigate at all. If I'm at least operating under the premise that I think they're going to be more competitive than even Vegas and all these people are giving them credit for in terms of their win total.